Dr. Monica Blyde. I'm going to share with you all today a little bit about stress management and living with lupus. First, a little bit about me. I am a licensed clinical health psychologist in Southern California. I am in private practice, specializing in helping adults who are living with chronic medical illnesses and also providing ADHD and autism assessments for adolescents and adults. I myself have been living with lupus since 2009, as well as fibromyalgia. I'm a wife, mother of 3, and I include my hobbies. They are Netflixing and napping, and I share that kind of like a joke, but it's for real because I enjoy laid back, low-key activities like Netflixing, watching nature shows, and napping, because actually both of those are really great for my mental health and wellness, in addition to going outside and getting some sun-safe activities in, like hiking. So today we're going to review what are the health effects of stress, and specifically stress for someone who is living with a diagnosis of lupus, such as you and I. And then we'll talk about what to do about it. So what are some body, mind, and spirit interventions for stress management? And we'll go through several of each. Please get a piece of paper and a pen because we'll do a short art therapy exercise as part of it. And then I'll share information on how to connect with me if you're interested. But here on this page, you can see a couple of quotes that I have. Don't end up the richest person in the grave, meaning that you work and overwork to the point of you accumulate all these material things, but to the point where it's a detriment to your own health and body. Let's not do that. And then also the tongue has the power of life and death. That is a proverb saying that what we say to ourselves and to others and how we speak over ourselves makes such a huge difference in our ability to manage stress and anxiety and depression. And it actually, we have the power to speak life over ourselves or speak death over ourselves. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about our mind interventions. So first, let's learn a little bit about the health effects of stress. This is from the Discovery News channel, and you can find this video on YouTube. And just to forewarn you, the woman on here, she speaks a mile a minute, but I love this video and I show it over and over again because she gives so much research, science-based explanations for how does stress affect our health in a general way. And this is for the general population, not just people living with autoimmune diseases, and also what we can do about it. So it's about 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. Oh my god. Oh gosh, this is the worst. Oh, I think I'm gonna throw up.
Oops, starting all over again.
Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. Oh my god. Oh gosh, this is the worst. Oh, I think I'm gonna throw up. Hey guys, Julia here for D News. Stress is really awful for your body. You know when you get scared, embarrassed, or anxious, your face flushes and you get all hot and sweaty? Well, this is called a psychogenic fever. Your body temperature actually increases when you're stressed. It's warming up the muscles in case you need to get the hell out of Dodge. Most of the short-term effects of stress are the result of this fight or flight response. The adrenal gland, which sits on top of your kidneys, releases the hormones in response to some stressor. This in turn releases glucose into your bloodstream to power you up, ready to take on a threat. It suppresses your digestion and immune system to save energy for hightailing it away from, like, a bear or something. But nowadays, we aren't threatened so much by bears, but school, work, and family matters stress us out just the same. All of those good things that those hormones do to save us from bears do bad things to us when we're faced with chronic stressors we can't run away from. One of the hormones, cortisol, is called the stress hormone, and it does a lot of different things. It can affect your blood pressure, metabolism, and immune reactions like inflammation. Basically, chronic stress makes your body continually release cortisol cortisol. Normally, this hormone keeps inflammation in check, but after a while, your cells get burnt out and become less receptive to the hormone. Inflammation then kind of runs amok and causes its own host of problems. Inflammation can lead to heart disease and obesity, and is now being implicated in some mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. Inflammation can also damage your DNA. The study, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, found that stress damages your telomeres. Telomeres are often compared to that plastic tip on your shoelaces. They sit on the ends of your chromosomes to keep them from unraveling. As cells divide and DNA replicates, these telomeres shorten throughout your life, eventually leading to cell death. The erosion of telomeres is a pretty good indicator of someone's health. Smokers often have shorter telomeres than non-smokers, for example. In this study, the researchers found that displaced Indian villagers had shorter telomeres than other villagers who didn't go through the stress of relocating, which is similar to other studies on the effects of stress on telomeres. But it's not just having your entire village moved. The American Psychological Association found that Americans are most stressed about work, money, and the economy. Does this sound like you? If you're chronically stressed, there is some hope. Being socially connected helps. One study, published in the journal Social and Personality Psychology Compass in 2011, found that people who have supportive, close relationships have lower levels of systemic inflammation compared to those people who have cold, unsupportive, and conflict-ridden relationships. Some studies show that mindfulness-based practices like yoga and meditation can reduce stress. Being mindful means you accept each moment as it is without judgment, seeing something as neither good or bad, it just is. And it's really hard to do. It definitely takes some training, but it's worth it. One study published in the Annals of Behavioral Medicine reaffirmed previous studies that mindfulness decreases distress and increases quality of life. So do some yoga, take a breath, everything is going to be a-okay. What are you most stressed about? How do you deal with it? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit those like and subscribe buttons and keep coming back here. We've got new episodes every day of the week.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. So much good information about what stress does to our health. Now, what about the impact of stress on lupus? So here's a graphic that just shows about the impact of both fatigue and stress in a general sense. So stress in lupus patients is associated with flares of disease activity. Many of us don't need a research study to tell us that, because we know from personal experiences in living everyday life, but it helps to have that validation and affirmation on a piece of paper in front of you. And then also the debilitating effects of fatigue. 90% of us experience fatigue and experience it to be one of the most disabling symptoms of lupus. So what does stress look like? So there are many different what's called psychosocial factors that are involved in stress. One is perceived stress. So psychosocial factors. One is perceived stress. So that is something that we feel or believe is stressful. So that can be a bill that is overdue. That can be an ex-boyfriend, girlfriend who won't stop calling, those types of things. And then also keep in mind that stress is not necessarily always negative. Stress can be from positive events as well. Graduation, although that's a good thing, it is also stressful because it requires a lot of planning and, preoccupying your thoughts and finances and so many other things. Alexithymia is this next psychosocial factor, and that is the inability to identify your moods and emotions, the inability to label it. And so that is associated also with psychological distress. So you're irritable and you're on edge, but not really understanding why or what's wrong. And then this also impacts your quality of life and your relationships. There's depression and anxiety. Depression typically looks like feeling sad or loss of interest in the things that you used to be interested in, or feeling a sense of hopelessness and or increased appetite or no appetite. There are so many symptoms that go into that, but typically it's having negative thoughts about yourself, others in the world, and then also the future, that hopelessness. Anxiety, that is all the worries and your fears and what if that and what about this and those things. Also adding to it the depression, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, all the regrets and preoccupations with all of our failures. And then negative emotions in general. And so, what do these factors that I just described, how do they show up in our bodies? Proteinuria. I don't think I pronounced that right, but protein in your urine. When there's increased inflammation in the kidneys and the kidneys are spilling out protein. Trigger disease activity. SLEDAI score, which is the Systemic Lupus Disease Activity Index, an index of 24 different factors that go into the clinical evaluation of how severe your lupus is. And then also immune, neuroendocrine factors. So your immune system, neuro, your brain, central nervous system, brain and spine, and endocrine, all the hormonal factors. All that increases as our psychosocial factors, these stress, increase, and it impacts our lupus. Some of the common flares that arise due to stress. That's kind of like one of the four triggers. And we'll review today what to do with it. But I also wanted to add that there are other things that contribute to us experiencing a flare in lupus. That includes weather, exhaustion, and nutrition. And I won't go too far into those are the topics today, but we can do it in future sessions. The weather. So it is so important that we protect ourselves from UV rays from the sun, including UV rays from indoor fluorescent lights. And so, although I think the statistic is that 30% of lupus patients have photosensitivity, 70% have that malar rash or that butterfly rash, which arises from a lupus flare or from photosensitivity, which is being in the sun. All of us experience internal impact of unprotected sun exposure. And so at a Lupus LA conference just a few years ago, one of the rheumatologists was sharing that the impact internally from as minimal as 10 minutes of sun exposure, going from your car to the grocery store and back, unprotected again, can be show up in your body internally up to 3 weeks later with increased levels of cytokines and other markers of inflammation. It is so important. Also, exhaustion. You know when you finally feel good because we're living with fatigue and every once in a while we get a little bump in energy. And then we try to take advantage of it and say like, oh my gosh, I feel good. Let me hurry up and pay this bill. Let me run this errand. Let me go to the bank. Let me babysit my, cousin, all these things. And what we do is we overdo it. And then we are laid on our back for the next 3 or 4 days or longer. What's important to keep in mind is like, don't do that. Whatever your to-do list is, cut it in half. And that to-do list, make what's left your to-do list for the week. Because if I know you like I know me, you have already overtasked yourself and you're putting too many obligations than what are realistic for our body's limitations. And then also having appropriate sleep hygiene. So sleep hygiene is a fancy word that basically says good sleep habits that promote a restful night's sleep. So that includes having a quiet, dark, and cool environment before you go to sleep, having about a 30 minutes buffer time before sleep, which trains your brain like, okay, it's time to go to bed because now I'm doing relaxing activities. I've turned off the blue light sources, my TV and my cell phone and my computer, and I'm reading a book or taking a bath or those kinds of activities. and I'm no longer drinking coffee after 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. and I am, having some light exercise. And you can look it up. I have on my website a sleep hygiene habits, do's and don'ts. And then also nutrition. And this is so vital. The gut to brain connection is so powerful, and it impacts not just our lupus and flaring lupus symptoms, but also our mental health. The gut brain connection is associated with depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. So, if you have a healthy gut microbiome, balance of the bacteria in your gut through incorporating an autoimmune diet or anti-inflammatory diet, then everything else is going to start to work as it should. Now, just full disclosure, this is the hardest thing for a lot of us to do, including myself. I have known about autoimmune diet and about leaky gut syndrome for over a decade. And I literally just recently started to take it very seriously. Consider your limits, consider your motivation, and I'd say just start somewhere. So what I started to do several years ago was switch from dairy to non-dairy milk. So I just didn't buy regular milk. Instead, I would buy, coconut milk or something like that. And so that was something that I could do, even though I couldn't, give up cheese and pasta and those kinds of things. It took a little bit longer. But my grandma says, "Ain beats nain," which means anything is better than nothing at all. So if you can even change one or two things, it's going to give you a healthier gut microbiome that's going to activate the positive connection of that gut brain, then you're on your way. So again, just do what you can. Okay, now let's get to the stress management interventions, what to do about it. We're going to start with some breath work. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is take a deep breath, and when you breathe, you're breathing in through your nose as if you're smelling a bouquet of roses, and when you breathe out, you're breathing out through pursed lips, like you're making an O, or blowing through a straw, and breathing out as if you are blowing out birthday candles. Or if you're doing this with a child, you can say like, okay, smell the pizza. Smells so good. Ooh, it's hot. Blow it out. Okay? So whatever you need to visualize to get that breath right. And then another thing to think about is as you're breathing in, as you're inhaling, I want your belly to get big. And when your belly expands out with the inhale, that is evidence that you are expanding and contracting that diaphragm muscle, which is going to help to relax our body, to decrease inflammation, and to do good, positive, healing things within our bodies. So let's just practice that. Right here on this screen, you see the box breath, which is typical. So 3 breaths in, 3 breaths out, 3 breaths in, 3 breaths out. So just practice that for a couple breaths. So in, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, in, 1, 2, 3, exhale, 1, 2, 3. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, exhale, 1, 2, 3. Excellent. But what I prefer is kind of like a rectangular instead of the box breath, where your exhales are longer than your inhale. And the way that I imagine it is that each time you exhale, you're letting go of whatever you don't need to hold on to right now. Our bodies naturally take in what we need, like oxygen, and naturally lets go of what we don't need, like carbon dioxide. So I want you to breathe in for a count of 3 and imagine yourself breathing in calm and peace and tranquility. And then breathe out, fully exhale, because typically we have issues with holding on to things and we don't need to. Let that ish go. Breathe out your worries. Breathe out your fears and breathe out your stress. Okay? So that's a count of 6. Let's try that. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, inhale. 1, 2, 3, and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What you might hear in the background is my toddler trying to get my attention, but she's okay. She's not alone. Dad is with her. All right, now we're going to do some body interventions because often when we're having stress, the stress shows up where? First one, our attitudes, okay? But then also in our bodies. It shows up as increase in headaches. It shows up as stomach aches because under stress, the sympathetic, the fight or flight system is activated where the digestion stops and everything is ready to mobilize and get out of Dodge. Versus when we are relaxed, our parasympathetic nervous system activates, and that's the rest and digest system, where the digestive system is activated, where our immune functioning is maximized, optimized, the way that it should be working, our body's ability to regulate glucose is happening right, and flare up or not flare up, right? So I'm going to teach you some techniques to take hold of the body level manifestations of stress. One, as you can see here with this lovely lady that looks like she's just having a good time hugging herself, it's called the havening touch. So what I want you to do is wrap your arms around yourself and then just rub down, giving yourself a nice hug and rub. And as you're doing this, notice if you have any sensations that come up. Any sparks of joy or energy or static or anything. Because what's happening as we do this, especially if you pair it with a smile, is that our brain receives an extra dose of the neurochemical oxytocin, which is our pleasure chemical. That's the same chemical that we get from hugging and kissing a loved one, from a mother holding her baby, or from nursing. All right, so just keep that up. And as you're doing this, I invite you to even gently close your eyes or lower your gaze and imagine yourself hugging someone that you want to hold on to right now, that perhaps you didn't get a chance to with the length of the pandemic. Picture that person in your mind. All right, great job. Now I'm going to introduce you to a few tapping techniques, self-tapping, and this is also going to activate our body's relaxation system. So one is called the butterfly hug. So what I want you to do is cross your hands like this, like a butterfly, and then cross your thumbs over, and then go ahead and place that on your chest. Notice your heartbeat, take a breath. And what you're going to do here is just a slow and gentle tap, one side and then the other. And this bilateral or both sides, alternating sides tapping also helps to promote relaxation on a biophysiological level, calming down our nervous systems, activating the parts of the brain that say relax, and deactivating the parts of the brain that says stress, stress, stress. That limbic system and amygdala. All right. And you can also unclasp your thumbs and then go ahead and bring your arms up to your shoulders, your hands to your shoulders, just like that havening touch, except stay here, and then you're just going to do these shoulder taps. And then again, it's slow, one and then the other. And this is one of the resourcing techniques or self-calming coping strategies that's used in EMDR therapy, which is trauma-focused treatment. All right, great. Now we're going to try something called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And that is tapping on specific points in our meridian that are associated with particular points in our brains for increased relaxation. So I want you to take 2 fingers on each hand. I'm going to take off my glasses so that you can see. Hopefully you can still see me. I can't see you. But take 2 fingers, and as you hit each point, say a calming phrase. Okay? So we're going to start here at the top of our head. I'm okay. Look to the eyebrows. I will focus on what I can control. Corners of the eye. I am loved. Right underneath the eye. I am enough. Right on the upper lip. I am okay. Chin. I will focus on what I can control. Collarbone. I am loved. Then under the arms. I am enough. And you notice that as I was doing that, I basically just did it as a mantra. I just said the same things over and over again. And you're visualizing tapping it in, like tapping it into your brain, like, hey, you get it, you get it. And on again, the biophysiological level, it actually helps to rewire our brain to receive these messages of affirmation and to, again, help us to relax and experience less stress. Okay. So this is just another graphic of how this is done. And then it's done with deep breaths. And you can see on this person's face what messages they said. Let it go. It's okay to let it go. It is safe to let it go. Just let it go. And then at the end, they held the wrist, took a deep breath, let it out, and said, peace. And you can continue tapping until you're able to actually change the meaning of negative memories or turn it into a positive. And this is MRI imaging that shows actually what's happening on a brain level before and after tapping. Before tapping, the parts of the brain that are associated with pain and distress are activated. After tapping, after doing something so simple that a lot of us have access to, if you have, motor movements, can do. All right. There's also something called gentle chair yoga. At the end of the conference today, I'm going to do a few movements with you as part of the closing session. So wait for that. And basically it is movement in a chair that just allows you to stretch, as you can see the women doing in the picture and the illustration. And what this does is it helps to loosen our fascia, which is our connective tissue that is throughout our whole body beneath the layer of our skin. And when that is too tight, then everything else is restricted. Our circulation, the movement of our organs. And when we do these simple movements, we help to loosen our fascia, which helps to regulate everything on the inside internally, but then also to help with the pain of arthritis and osteoarthritis, and again, lower levels of inflammation, which are associated with mental health issues, depression and anxiety, and then also physical health issues like lupus and heart disease and diabetes and so many other issues that we have. Now let's do some mind-brain interventions. Thought management. Manage your stinking thinking, okay? So if you have ever heard me speak before on IG Live or any of the other conferences that I do, I often talk about the cognitive triad in cognitive behavioral therapy, which says what we think, what we say to ourselves, like I said in the beginning of the presentation, will impact how we feel and how we behave. Okay? So, what we think impacts the emotions that we experience and what we do or don't do, as well as what shows up in our bodies. Okay? So, say for example, if I wake up and I have the thought like, oh my gosh, my neck is hurting again, as it usually does when I wake up. Oh, I'm always going to have this pain. This is awful. I'm too young to deal with this. This is not fair. I just can't stand this. Why me? These are the thoughts that I'm telling myself, right? How is that going to impact my emotions, what I'm feeling? If I'm telling myself, why me, this is horrible, it's never going to end, then it's probably going to end up with me feeling depressed, hopeless, and in despair. Okay? And how is that going to impact my behavior? Well, one, I'm probably not going to get out of bed. Like, what's the point? Why go to work, right? And then also, I'm probably also going to have, a lot of tearfulness and crying and not going to work out, not going to drink water or, have a healthy diet or anything else. I'm actually going to eat the things that feed my brain dopamine, which are the sweet foods, the salty, junky foods, and all that. Not super helpful. What if instead we shifted that thought and said, okay, I'm in pain. This sucks. This is, really hard. However, I've made it through hard times before, and I will make it through this again. So let me just call a friend and, gripe and moan, or get my mind and do something else. Let me just distract myself, for a few minutes. If I tell myself those thoughts instead, like, trouble don't last always, then how is that going to impact my emotions? Maybe there's still a touch of depression there, okay? However, the intensity of that emotion shifts from despair to sadness to irritation. How does that then impact my behavior? Maybe I get up and take a shower. I do something. How does that impact what shows up in my body? Now I have physical movement. So that's going to help me on every level, mental, physical, lupus flare-wise. It all makes a difference, and it starts with your thoughts and what you're telling yourself. So what are some ways to challenge automatic negative thoughts? You can ask yourself, what is a more helpful thought? If my friend had this thought, what would I tell them? Or if my child had this thought, what would I tell them? Often we are our own harshest critic and our own worst enemy. And we would never speak to someone else that we love the way that we speak to ourselves. So sometimes we need to step outside of ourselves, like, okay, well, what would I tell this child? What would I tell, a friend that I really love? And it's probably going to be something a little bit more encouraging and a little softer. Or if the worst really did happen, what could I do to deal with it and who could help me? Oftentimes, when we do have anxiety and when we do have depression, what happens is that in our mind, the problem is magnified, like explosive. And our ability to handle it is really minimized. Like, I can handle it this much, when really it's usually the opposite. I can handle it this much, and the problem is like around here, right? So we need to put things into context and say, like, okay, am I catastrophizing this situation? If the worst did happen, how could I deal with it? What resources, tools, strategies do I have, including those that you learn in this session, okay? And who around me can support me? Can I call upon the Looms4Lupus group? Can I call upon, a friend or family member who knows what I'm going through? What resources, strategies, support can you employ to help you through this, just to make it to the next moment? And then also remember, what is the best possible outcome? We always think like, oh, what's the worst could happen, but what about the best? Maybe, I go to physical therapy and I don't have as much. I learn exercises to reduce my neck pain. Or maybe fill in the blank, because those are possible too. All right, so here are 3 main ways to be able to challenge stinking thinking: redirect, reframe, and recognize or accept. Redirect, shift your focus. Sometimes you just need to distract yourself. Watch a comedy movie, play a puzzle, put together a puzzle, do some adult coloring. Just put your mind somewhere else other than whatever that stressor is. Reframe, shift your perspective. What is a different way of looking at this? Yes, I have a chronic illness, and now I have the opportunity to appreciate every day that I have. I have people around me who love me and care about me. I'm going to push, and I'm going to be an inspiration for myself, even if nobody else listens or cares. What is a different way to look at this? And the third is recognize or accept. Sometimes because of too much GABA, or too little serotonin, the different brain chemicals, you just got a lot of anxiety, depression. It just is what it is, right? However, that doesn't mean that has to be the main focus, the big star in your mind. So you treat that anxiety and depression, those thinking thoughts, as like the ticker tape at the bottom of the screen. So here you can see the ticker tape at the bottom of these screens with the weather channels. Like, okay, here's the local weather, and then across the screen right here is the local weather. So world weather, in Georgia is going to be, hot and humid, and California is going to be perfect as usual. It's my own biases. But you just treat it like, okay, there it is. It's there. That constant worry, those thoughts, what if this, what if that, I regret this, all that. But notice what's the big screen. The big screen is different. Your main point of view and perspective is what is within my control today that I'm going to focus on. You choose what you focus on. And so that could be something that brings you joy today. That could be on, going for a walk, sun protected, or, after 4 p.m. That could be, reading a book. That could be going to your doctor's appointments, taking your medication. What is within your control that you can do today? Bonus points if it also brings you joy. All right, so we're going to practice this with a little bit of art therapy. I told you to have a piece of paper and a pen. So what I want you to do is, and I'll just give you 2 minutes, on your piece of paper, horizontal orientation, so long ways this way. I want you to draw at the bottom of the paper a line about 1 inch from the bottom, and then just draw across that ticker tape. And within that ticker tape, just draw write out all your thoughts, your worries, your concerns, your whatever, your to-do list, everything that's on your mind, that running log script in your mind. All right. And then at the top of that page, the remaining 7 inches, we're using the 8x11, I want you to illustrate. What is the one thing today, or several things, that you will do that is within your control? So again, that could be scheduling a doctor's appointment and showing up. That could be cuddling up with your favorite soft blankets and a book, or listening to music, or reading from the holy text from your faith system. That could be singing. That could be FaceTiming with a friend who you haven't seen. What activity brings you satisfaction or pleasure or joy? Okay, so for the sake of time, we're going to move on, but practice this. And it might be helpful to do it, every morning for the first 5-10 minutes when you wake up. Just notice all the stinking thoughts that you have, all the to-do list, all the worries, concerns, write that down. But again, not allowing that to be your primary focus for today. Illustrating, this is what is going to be my primary focus. This is where I want to be presently mindful and aware and investing what energy that I have. This is where I'm going to use the majority of my spoons today. And then I just want to acknowledge grief. Living with chronic illness is can bring about a state of repeated grief and assaults to our hope of health, our expectations of what we should be able to do or accomplish, and it's painful. And so I just want to share as this picture of the pandemic, a cycle of grief, but this is just not with pandemic. It's with living with chronic illness. It's with the real life grief of losing people during this time, having fear of ourselves, having a declining health state or rehospitalizations. And so what does grief typically looks like? Shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, trying to find realistic solutions, and acceptance, finding the way forward finally. Here's another pictorial illustration of that. How we might be shocked, then have anger, sadness, forgiveness of ourselves and others. Facing the loss, release, acceptance. Notice in both of these illustrations, grief is illustrated as a linear process, whether it be up and down or across, but that's not really how grief works in real life. Typically, it's circular and like a ping pong table. Okay, you're shocked, and then you're depressed, and then you're sad, and then you're, accepting, and then something else hits you with a surprise in your lab results, or, an event that you can't go to, or a decline on a job offer, or whatever. And then you get back to the sadness, and then you get back to the bargaining and all that. And so if you've been experiencing more of a ping pong table throughout your years or however long course of living with this disease, just know that you are normal and that there is still hope for you, that you can persevere and you can reach a level of acceptance for wherever you are today. And acceptance does not mean giving up. It does not mean to just say okay, well, whatever, this is just what it is, so I should just stop trying. That's not what it is. That means having a full awareness of what is, and then moving forward with, okay, so what can I do now? What's gonna be. So again, what is still within my control? And then embracing life with those changes, with that new understanding, writing a new narrative for how you make sense of your situation. All right, before we end, I wanted to share with you guys some resources. Here's the COVID Coach app This was developed by the Department of Defense and the VA, and it is free. And it is for managing stress is just one of the tools that it has. And you can see here that if you open the COVID Coach app, again, it's free. So if you open one, there's another one that has a similar name, but it ain't free, so that's not the one. But it says manage stress, and then it has different tools that you can use. Deep breathing, connecting with others, changing your perspective. I talked about that already. Doing a body scan. Or if you're not familiar with the tools, you can just go straight by challenges. What are you experiencing? Sleep struggles, handling anger and irritability, feeling sad or hopeless, feeling lonely, needing to create space for myself. Oftentimes we are givers. Give. And then the expression is used, pouring from an empty cup, because we've given so much of ourselves and we don't have strong enough or appropriate enough boundaries that we maintain in these relationships. I invite you to, instead of giving from a half empty or half full cup, is to fill yourself up enough with these tools and skills and resources that you're giving from your overflow. You have so much to give that it doesn't bring up resentment or a loss of energy when you do pour into someone else, because again, it's overflow. You've taken such good care of yourself, and you've maintained boundaries, and you've maintained that self-respect and space for yourself, that you have an abundance pouring out that you can give to others. And I try to model that myself. It's hard, but it is possible. Finally, spirit and soul interventions. I want you to connect and reconnect with what gives you meaning and purpose. That could be worship. That could be community building. The picture that's a little blocked is a woman and possibly her child just spending time together, going out in nature, or if you don't have access to that, looking at YouTube videos of waterfalls or beaches, whatever brings you calm and peace and serenity. Because that too, the spirit care, that soul care, is going to have that same positive, super beneficial effect on our nervous system, on our vagus nerve, as well as on how well we're able to manage this disease and thrive. So think about what brings you joy. I love the little boy here with the fireflies, and he's just like, yay, sitting in the grass. And sometimes we just got to go back to the basics. Because children, you notice, young children, who haven't been exposed to trauma, they just find joy in the little things. Like, oh my gosh, like there's mud, let's play in the mud. And then, how often do we not even notice the mud, or we're like, I don't want to get my shoes dirty, or may not even notice the sunset or the beauty of a sunrise because we're just trying to get to work, or just trying to do the next thing, or we have a million things on our mind. Go back to the basics and appreciate the beauty that is around us in everyday life. And think about what brings joy, laughter, a smile to your spirit. And I love this quote by Leonard Cohen that says, "Ring the bells that can still ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in." Think about that. Ring the bells that can still ring. That means some bells can't still ring no more, right? And that's how it is with us living with lupus. There are some things that we can't do anymore. And that's painful and that can feel devastating, but there are some things that you can still do. So ring those, do those things. Forget your perfect offering. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do the things that you did 10 years ago or 20 years ago because, baby, like my grandma said, just keep seeing them AMs and PMs. Just keep living There's a whole lot of things that are going to change, and that's okay. That's the course of life. There is a crack in everything. Hey! Even with lupus, even with our limitations and our changes and all that, guess what? Everything has a crack, but there's beauty in it. That's how the light gets in. Think about the light that has come into your life since you've been diagnosed with lupus. Maybe now you appreciate everyday things. Maybe now you're more aware of your body and your emotions. Maybe now you take the time to listen and laugh along when you hear a baby laughing. Or maybe you are present when you're with other people and just really appreciating their company. What is the light that has come in since you've been diagnosed? Think about that. And if nothing comes to mind, then ask someone else. Because sometimes when we're overwhelmed with depression or anxiety, it is hard to think about what opportunities have come. And that's why we need a support system around us. That's why we need people who can keep us accountable and who can remind us, hey, here's your hope. I'll hold it for you. Here's a little pinch. Here's another little pinch. And when you're ready to receive it, it's here. Who are those people in your life? Thank you so much for your time today. If you are interested in connecting with me, this is how. Also, if you need immediate therapeutic support, I encourage you to go to psychologytoday.com. You can search for therapists who are in your area, matched with your demographic, and who accept your insurance. Okay. Also, I recommend again the COVID Coach app, and the Shine app also has meditations that you can follow and some thought-changing strategies and skills. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any questions. And have a great rest of your conference. Bye.